Hey David, how you doing, sir?
I'm all right. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly fine. Yeah, can you see me and hear me okay? Yeah,
Absolutely perfect. Yeah.
that's brilliant. Thanks so much for your time. I know you're a busy chap this month.
Oh, no worries at all. No, it's my first interview for Death Spell, so we'll see how
Uh-huh.
it goes.
No, but if it goes by my thoughts of the book, it'll be really good because I've loved it. It's very David Sodergren, but at the same time, I know that you actually went into this one kind of really, even though you didn't. I mean, people say that your books are kind of extreme splatterpunk horror, which I think they are as well. But you were kind of not so sure if they were as far out as everyone was saying. Though, so this one was kind of like you trying to go even further than we kind of expected you to go. No, I
Precisely.
mean,
Yeah.
did you really believe that your previous books were not so hardcore as kind of your fans feel that they are?
Most of them, yeah. Just I've seen people describe like horror as extreme horror and stuff, and you know what? To some people, it absolutely. Um, are are we recording? By the way, is this?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
recording. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
okay,
No worries. Yes, and to some people, the horror may be extreme, or Maggie's grave might be extreme, or anything. Um, I just sort of compare it to some of the extreme horror stuff that I've read, and I've never thought of it as being too extreme. Maybe, but Satan's burnouts must die, or by God's hand you shall
God's hand. I
die.
saw you read. I think you put on Instagram or something. Those two you do kind of consider more out there, no, compared to kind of the other stuff that you put out now.
I'd say so, yeah, because I mean, even in Death Spell, I still, I cut away earlier than some extreme horror authors or splatterpunk authors
Really?
would normally do. Yeah, um, well, actually, maybe not so much in Death Spell. I'm thinking of a certain scene
I
quite
was
early
thinking
on.
I was thinking of kind of a hole. There's a hole in that book somewhere. That kind of that goes far out. So when you yeah, I mean, I don't think you set many limits in this one. No.
No, I tried. No, I just wanted to go as far as I could go, really. As I say that, and then my next book that I'm currently writing as well probably goes even further in some respects,
Right.
but I do have a really nice one planned for after those two.
Right.
So
But no, but something that I love about your books is the fact that even though they do kind of they're really out there. They are quite sentimental and quite very poignant in many places. This one as well. So I imagine that you do, even though you want to kind of create as extreme content as possible. How do you go about kind of setting limits for yourself to make sure that that extreme isn't just kind of purely gratuitous and just kind of and you kind of rein it in to keep it as kind of poignant and as kind of sentimental as it does get?
I think it's partly because even when I go really extreme and gory and violent and bloody and outrageous and stuff, there's still an element of camp almost to it sometimes.
Yeah.
Even in Deathspell, I think that for me, Deathspell has a bit of a John Waters-esque sensibility to it, sort of slightly satirical, eat the rich type kind of feel. And and for me, it's that part is important. Like the violence and the thrills and the action and excitement are important, but equally important for me anyway is like the characters that you do care and that you like them. And I am at heart a bit a big sentimental sap, so I love to put in sort of love story elements, here and there, the heart most explicitly, certainly.
Sure. Yeah.
But I love it. It's something that's not done often enough for me because this when I'm writing a book, in a way, I'm my own biggest fan because I write the books that I would want to read. And as a lifelong reader and watcher of horror, I love when there's something slightly different. I love when there's a romantic element comes into it, or there's, um, uh, or something like, or it's a musical as well. I love when people do something slightly different, slightly unexpected, and just do something a bit more with the genre because, yeah, you can chop up a bunch of teenagers 6 ways to Sunday. But if you don't care about them, if you're not invested in them, it's hollow. It's fun but hollow.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, talking of hollow, these characters, a lot of them, they are kind of quite kind of hollow, shallow characters in themselves. You know, they're just kind of out for a buck or out for what they want. So, how did you go about kind of creating these characters that are very shallow in themselves, but we end up really kind of feeling for them and understanding them in this, especially in this book, in Death Spell.
Yeah, well, when I started out, my first couple of books, Forgotten Island and Night Shooting Things, people used to say that the characters were all so unlikable, apart from like the main character who you're supposed to like it, and it's partly because I adore writing jerks. I just love writing a real asshole because it's so much fun. It's so much fun to do. Um and so I sort of pivoted a little bit and started doing maybe more likable characters in a book. Uh and Deathspell feels like a throwback in a way to just writing really repulsive, horrible people, but I kind of loved them as well. And I've had that feedback from like my beta readers. Like Ron and his daughter Vivian especially, they're so contemptible that they're almost endearingly awful in a way. Like they're horrible people, absolutely without doubt, but they're so horrible again in that sort of John Waters-esque grotesque type way that you're not rooting for them, but
Yeah,
you don't hate spending time with them. I think that's the key. You don't, yeah, if you're writing these horrible characters, it can't be that you're reading it going, oh, I no, you're just not enjoying your time with them. And I think that pair, I certainly hope that people will have fun with them because they're ludicrous. They're caricatures almost,
yeah.
which is absolutely fine for this sort of book. When I'm doing something like Rotten Tommy or The Heart or something, I you need to ground the characters a bit more. But with something like this, where it's a bit more over the top, just it's designed to be outrageous. You can get away with characters that are it's stereotypes almost, but really fun versions of them.
Yeah. No, I mean, what I really appreciate about the characters in this book is the fact that from the beginning, I kind of thought we were going to stick with Nick's character. It was kind of like this action hero that we say. I kind of felt that he was going to be the protagonist, and then when things kind of hit the fan and we end up kind of behind the father, Ron Jarvis, and Vivienne's characters in the end, it really kind of threw me back, and I wasn't sure where it was going to take me. And then the fact that they are these despisable characters, but we kind of end up not rooting for them, we kind of almost empathizing, especially with Ron's kind of he's looking out for his daughter, even though he didn't want any kids before he had his
Yeah.
daughter. Then because he's had his daughter, he realizes what it is to become a parent and to kind of do anything for her. So kind of because that he'll do anything, that was kind of what helped us to kind of empathize with him, but also kind of understand why all this horror happens because of people will just do whatever they need to do to make sure that their kids are happy, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing with Ron. It's like he wants to be a good father, and I think that's the part where you're sort of you're in as a reader, to him is that he is trying to be a good father. The problem is he's a terrible father. He's awful. He just showers her with money to shut her up. He doesn't care. It's all he wants to feel like he is a good father. Um, but yeah, he's dreadful. And the thing with Nick at the start was, and that's something I really, really like to do in books is I like to pull the rug out from under you a bit because if you
No, but you really did with this one, especially because of Nick and then another girlfriend that he has in the story. At the beginning, I was
yes,
like, these are the two that we're going to go with. I can't wait to see what happens to these two. Obviously, without giving anything away, that is exactly not what happens. But I was
yeah,
kind of you just fall in love with those two characters at the beginning, so it's kind of like wow, when things do happen, kind of like a third of the way through, yeah.
it's the classic psycho trick, isn't it? I love doing because I never want you to know 100% who's going to make it to the end, or who's going to be good, who's going to be bad. Sometimes I'll do a little trick right at the very end, sometimes three-quarters through. You never know. And I really, really, really wanted people to think that okay, here's these two people, I really like them. Okay, I'm looking forward to going on this journey with them, and then you will go on a journey with them. It might not be the
Yeah,
journey
no, yeah,
you
sure, yeah.
expect.
Don't want to put any spoilers in there, but yeah, we go through they're all the way through the story, especially Nick. but I was just expecting it to be a very different kind of arc that he goes through in the story. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I it's Nick's
Difficult not to give
difficult to
anything
talk
away.
about
Yeah, I don't
without
want to.
spoilers.
Yeah.
I certainly there was various permutations his journey went through on the various outlines and drafts. Before I settled on the final one, and there was some were nicer than others, some were even worse. You know, it's
Uh-huh. I mean, talking of Nick, it's kind of very much a throwback to kind of a Jean-Claude Van Damme type character. No, was that always your intention, or was that something that came later on, kind of when things became more satirical? I think you said that you wanted to be extreme, and then because you were writing this kind of extreme story, these kind of more satirical characters and satirical kind of scenarios kind of came as a kind of result of the extremity of the story. No.
yeah, absolutely, and that's something that I'd sort of unintentionally done in several books before, not under my own name, but I've been writing under a pseudonym called Carl John Lee as well. And
Mhm.
I sort of realized after writing several of those that I was having more fun with the characters than I would allow
Right.
myself to do. So they would be bigger, they'd be crazier. So like Cannibal Vengeance, for example, is by Carl John Lee. You know, the leads are a porn actor nicknamed the Pendulum, and there was a South American drug lord. Like that was your main characters, and I sort of took that fun aspect, yeah, into Death Spell, because I think if I'd written it really straight with no without these sort of slightly campier, crazier elements, it would have been just a grueling read, which I don't. I'm not there to punish the reader. You know, I want them
Yeah.
to enjoy the books. Um, and certainly Nick, yeah, I think in my sort of initial drafts when the book was meant to be just like you know, just a torrent of horrendous nastiness, he was an actor. But then I dearly love 80s action movie heroes like
Yeah.
Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, especially. Maybe Seagal sometimes, but
When he's not eating a carrot. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and so I definitely sort of leaned into that sort of
Yeah.
action hero fantasy figure. But I think I made Nick nicer than any or most of those guys certainly. It's,
Especially at the onset. Yeah, yeah. Talking about action movies, I mean, I don't want to give anything away again, obviously, but there's a great scene where there's kind of like there's three of the kind of the security guys you've got working for Ron, and it's almost the setup feels like it's like an action, like an 80s action movie that they're going to take on something, but when kind of certain comeuppance happens in the end, it's completely the opposite you expected, exactly the opposite of kind of the macho 80 roles, which I really, really, really liked. Was that something that was kind of intentional? That just kind of come about when you wanted to have these characters take on what they have to take on without giving anything
well,
away?
I'm always like I'm a huge like horror is my number one love. You can see the millions of horror DVDs and
Yeah.
Blu-rays there. But I dearly love action as well. And so I'm always looking for ways to combine them a bit, throw in a little bit of action, and definitely that scene in particular you're referring to was there was an element of
It reminded me a little bit of kind of Predator, that kind of setup of kind of a Predator type movie, something like that. They're about
yes,
to kind of
absolutely. So I was sort of picturing it as sort of aliens, like the
yeah,
super tough marine macho manly men who, you know, they don't, you know, what they're up against, they're not you know, they're not taking seriously at all. Kind of like again like the start of Predator where where they go in thinking they just got to wipe out an army, no problem at all, you
yeah.
know, for but yeah, definitely I wanted that sort of action feel partly as well because you know it made sense because I set up at the start that we've got an action hero. So it kind of paves the way to put in some 80s style action, which you know maybe wouldn't have been appropriate in a lot of other books. But yeah, yeah.
But no, it was just brilliant. It was brilliantly set up because in that scene, there's kind of two characters that just come out of nowhere, basically. But even just like in just those few pages, you really kind of explain exactly the thoughts going through there, and it just works so well.
That's it. It's almost I grew up reading Sean Hudson and James Herbert and stuff, and they always used to have these chapters where it would suddenly cut away to this person you've never met before, and then you get this sort of slightly boring sometimes backstory to this character, and then they die. So it's trying to do that, but in a slightly more concise way and a more interesting way where it actually drives the plot and it does make it's make the characters slightly more real than they needed to be almost, because it's
Yeah.
you could easily put for a book like this that's designed to just be like outrageous. You could easily have a three cops run in and they're just boring cops and stuff. But it's much more interesting, certainly. And by doing that as well, it enabled me to they sort of meet the it's hard to not to spoil
I'm
because
sorry, yeah. No,
it's
yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. That is,
yeah,
yeah,
their
that
their their character
explains
types
why,
play in
explains what happened to them and why what happens to them now. Yeah.
exactly. So it sort of puts you in the mind of the protagonist slash antagonist who is perhaps facing off against them because it lets you sort of see how they are going about doing what they're doing.
Mhm. And then without, I don't want to kind of go into spoiler territory, but I can't not talk about these two characters. Obviously, it's called Death Spell, so you can imagine there's some kind of voodoo or something going on there. So there is, we get two characters there. They were quite curious, especially how do you pronounce it? Is it Suin, the witch doctor that we see in the story?
Yep.
He I don't know, he was completely exactly the opposite of some of the kind of a witch doctor I was expecting to come across in this book. Where was kind of the inspiration for that character specifically?
It was so Death Spell itself is the inspiration for it came from watching Hong Kong black magic films, Hong Kong and Indonesian black magic films. Big
You have a
fan.
whole great big long list of inspiration movies at the end of the book now as well. Yeah,
Absolutely. And a lot of them are it's the problem is some of them are absolutely terrible. A lot of them have violence to
animal
animals in
cruelty
them.
and stuff.
It's
Yeah.
unavoidable at that era, unfortunately. But some of the films are tremendous fun. But there was a slight element of racism to them back in the day where it was like it was seen as most of them were made in Hong Kong, and they went to Thailand usually, and it was because the Thai people were seen as superstitious and creepy almost. The Thai black magic wizard always is a sleazeball, and he's a villain and things. So I did not want to fall into that archetype
Right.
because um and so I've got these awful Westerners coming over who are just the worst people in the world, and I wanted to not make this guy a real character, and he does have his problems, and he talks about them, and what he'd done in the past and things, but I wanted to make him likable and real as well. All the characters have to have some reality, somewhere to them, and I just thought he'd be a really good uh I've got a little running joke with song titles and things in there with him
Right.
that I think just gave him that little bit
Yeah,
of
that's right. Yeah, with Meatloaf.
personality
That's right. Yeah.
because he's in the book very little. You need to give something that's going to make them memorable, that's going to make you like them, even like real quick. So that yeah, I just wanted to make him a real sort of character that is not what you expect because especially if you've just seen all these films, then you know what to expect when they go to Thailand and meet the black magic practitioners. I did not want to fall into that trap.
Brilliant. And also, I was quite curious that releasing this book exactly the same time as you want to release your last book, Summer of Monsters, no? Which you completely decided against in the end. Which I imagine that was probably the better marketing choice. No, especially if you two people are going to buy that book, if they weren't familiar with your content, I probably wasn't the best place to start with those two completely different kind of books. But because of the fact that there is a kind of a father-daughter relationship going on there, you kind of considered releasing those two at the same time, no?
Yes, yeah, that was exactly it. It was kind of influenced strongly by Kiss in I think 1978, releasing their four different solo albums
Right.
at the same time, um, to show their range or something. And I kind of, because there was these thematic similarities between these two books, there was a part of me that just thought it'd be so much fun to put them both out. And because Summer of the Monsters is a very sweet, tender coming of age story. There's bits of violence and some gore and things and some monsters and stuff, obviously as per the title. But it's a nice story that's almost borders YA occasionally until it doesn't,
Right.
you know. But I thought, wouldn't it be great fun to have that and Death Spell out at the same time? But also it would be a terrible idea because one book's definitely going to get lost in the shuffle, and someone
Right.
who picks up some of the monsters I've got my readers who I know are going to read everything I do, but then there's people who read my nicer stuff, there's people who read my slightly more graphic nasty stuff, and it was going to get messy. It was going to be getting ARC review copies, advanced reader copies out there was going to be difficult. I think I was getting over ambitious. I had to be talked down from it, but I think it was definitely for the best because I know I kind of shoot myself in the foot as well because you want to. I'm trying to aiming for a book
Thanks.
every 6 months or thereabouts. So to put out two at once was, yeah, not a great idea. But I think it would have
Uh-huh.
been fun. Maybe one day.
No, it would have been fun as well. Yeah, to kind of to juxtapose the two at the same time would have been fun at the same time. Yeah. Uh-huh. And also, I can't not mention Boris the Pug, who always makes cameos in the books. Um, how easy or how difficult or how fun is it to always kind of find where to pop the pugs in the books? Is that something that you come up with very early on, or is that something that you write the book and then you think, right, it could go here, here, here? How do you go about deciding where to add the cameo? Because that's really difficult, especially when people know exactly that it's going to come somewhere. You need to make sure that you can find just the right place to make sure that it fits in and people have a giggle or whatever about the cameos. No,
That's Yeah. You don't want to put it in right in the middle of an action scene or something like
well,
that.
it
It's
depends. It
got
depends.
to
It
be a
could work.
well, we could try it. It's got to be vaguely appropriate. Sometimes it's incredibly easy. I mean, Forgotten Island, the pug is one of the main characters in the book.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's very difficult. I did a western with Steve Stredd called The Navajo Nightmare that I did do my research and I did find evidence of a pug in the American Wild West, so I was very happy I could easily put one in there. Um, my next book is set in the 19th century Italy, in a convent. That's proving difficult, but I have managed to get around it. I've got a lovely pug in that. Um, it's become a nice little Easter egg. I actually borrowed the idea from a friend of mine called Bradley Freeman, who wrote an amazing horror book called Reek years and
we
years back.
right.
Now it's coming out again. I think he's re-releasing it this month. It's been about 10 years since it was out. Um, Great book, Reek. Definitely recommend that. But he had his pug in that book, and then he's written two other ones, and his pug turned up in them. And I basically stole his idea, but it's fine because I credit him, and we're good friends. um, but it's yeah, it's just so much fun. I love putting a little Easter egg in there occasionally, and also I love writing about pugs. Because I love pugs. He's
You've got
not
one
here just
yourself as
now,
well. Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. Well,
He's
you've got one
in
yourself as well. You bought it's another pug. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's away with my wife at the moment. Because in the other room because he's an absolute nightmare. Whenever I'm doing an interview, he's just barking. By the way, is my signal okay? I realized I had the wrong
Yeah, no,
Wi-Fi.
no, it's not choppy at all. It's perfectly fine. Yeah, yeah. I'm over
Oh,
here in Spain as well, but no, everything's fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
perfect, perfect. Um, yeah, yeah. I love Boris. I love pugs.
No, you can tell. Yeah, yeah. That's great. I mean, you mentioned that the Western, that was you were talking about Western. I mean, that Western, that was you co-wrote that with another author. Is that something that you would do again? Another kind of a work together on a book with someone?
No, only I do it again with Steve, and we do have one. Well, I say we've got one planned. We've had it planned for about 3 years. He's written his half. I've written about the first chapter or something, but I very much the reason I wouldn't co-write with anyone. other than Steve, because I know him very well, is that I'm impossible to work with.
Yeah.
I
No, I imagine. I
um,
imagine. I mean, I like to go running, and I don't like to go running with other people. I don't want them to kind of for me to kind of make them slow down, or for me to make them run faster, or whatever. So it's I mean, it's the same kind of thing. I imagine you don't want to be a stumbling block for someone else. No.
That's it. Yeah, I just feel bad, but I can only work on what I want to work on at
Yeah.
that time. I can't. I'm not. I can't just sit down and force myself to write something when I have three other ideas that I'm at that moment more passionate about. Um, I would never. I don't even understand how people sort of co-author like with Navajo. I wrote the first half as a novella. Steve wrote the second half as a novella, and that worked nicely.
Yeah.
And that's what we were planning for the next one as well. Um, but I would never, certainly not, like co-write a single narrative with someone. I don't even know how that would work because I'm such a control freak. I would just want the entire thing. I would keep changing their thing to sound more like me, and that's rotten. So yeah, I
And don't
don't.
you make it sound like you? I mean, you said that obviously you've got the alter egos who wrote books. I think there were more books that you kind of wanted to be able to write kind of quicker. No, I think you wrote those. I think most books you kind of turn around in about 6 months or a year, but whereas these are kind of a few weeks. No, is that
Yeah,
something you want to
absolutely.
carry on doing?
Possibly. The thing is, so that was great fun because it was, yeah, there was a couple of those books actually from idea to being published and available to purchase was 10 days, which is
10 days, really.
mad. But I did enjoy that. I loved the freedom because, once I'm on what, book 11 or something now, 12. I
Don't
just,
know about you. One of the most prolific ones going at the moment. Yeah, there's like every 6 months or so you've got something out there. Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So, uh, sorry, what were we saying?
If you carry on as Carl with your alter egos, releasing some books maybe
Yeah,
like that.
Carl. Um, so the thing is, yeah, that was really fun. It was really freeing because, yeah, there was no pressure and I could just write anything. And I sort of assumed that no one would ever read them. And then I wrote one called Psychic Teenage Bloodbath that got really quite popular. So then Carl got a bit more popular and I lost that sort of freedom of being like, well, no one's ever going to read this. I can just do whatever I want. Almost like a sort of palate cleanser between books. If I was stuck, I would sit down and write Cannibal Vengeance, be like, oh, there we go. That's a nice wee book done. Um, I've told everyone now that I'm Carl, but the books still don't sell particularly well in
Mhm.
comparison to mine. So it's like I could do another like Carl book, but would it make sense just to spend more time on it, make it into one of my books, and it actually reaches a lot more readers? We'll see. I do have a Psychic Teenage Bloodbath 3
The
planned.
third one. All right.
Yeah, that's so I've got that I've got a strong idea for that. But other than that, I'm not sure if we'll get any more from Carl. Death Spell was, for a while when it was still being considered, that was the idea was to have that as a Carl John Lee book. In fact, I think that even up to the first draft, I was still vaguely considering it because I think the first draft didn't have a pug in it because,
Right.
oh, terrible. But there is now. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I can, you know,
I guess once you've once you've kind of told people who he is, it kind of makes it more difficult for you to dive into that because you have to give him more of a voice than probably you gave him beforehand now because that was kind of you not giving him a voice because that was you, but you didn't want anyone to know that it was you, know, if you know what I mean.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, I think if anything, I'd probably just do another pseudonym and churn out a few books that way. When I say churn out, I've got to say the Carl John Lee books, with the exception of maybe the first two. The next five, I think they are really good, and they were written in like maybe a month to 6 weeks or so, some of them. Um, which is still pretty fast for a 50,000 word novel, but
For you,
I
though.
did put a lot of care and attention and love into them as well. In fact, Psychic Teenage Bloodbath 1 and 2, especially 2, are some of my favorite books that of mine that I've written. I really like Psychic Teenage Bloodbath 2. That's the maddest thing I've done by far. It's bonkers.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you think about it, especially in terms of movies, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the movies that made us on Netflix, like if you see things like Die Hard, that was just like a lot of that stuff was just improvised on the moment. And
Yeah.
look how many people are still speaking about that movies now, and it's like it's a lot of art. Basically, but you don't really kind of put too much thought into it and just kind of go with it, and it works really well. I've just recently seen as well. Until Dawn. And I don't know if you're into video games, but they've made a movie adaptation of Until Dawn,
Yeah, I saw
and
the
that's
trailer. Yeah, I
kind
like
of
the game.
I spoke to the director yesterday, a lot of it was kind of on the fly, improvised special effects and stuff. But it's so good if you're into that kind of stuff. I highly recommend that movie as well.
Is that
And
the director that did Lights Out as
he did
well?
like that. That's right. Yeah,
Oh, I really like that. Yeah, it
Sandberg.
was
That's
the
right. Yeah,
Swedish guy or something. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Hansel Sandberg. Yeah, David Sandberg.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking
That's right.
forward to
Yeah.
that then.
No, that's a great one. Yeah, so it's a really good one. That's kind of it's a bit like your this book. It kind of really pulls the rug from under you. You just do not know where it's going at all. So yeah, that's a great movie. So yeah, but like I was saying, those kind of books must be really good for you because it kind of I imagine it alleviates the pressure of kind of creating something that's very structured, no? So that it allows you to kind of just focus on that for a couple of weeks or whatever, 3 4 weeks, and then get back into something that's kind of really structured and got to do a lot more homework on it now.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, when I write, I outline incredibly heavily, chapter by chapter, like 4 or 5 thousand word outline before I even start the first draft. Whereas when I was writing as Carl, I would just be like, uh, Death Freaks on Hell's Highway. I started with the title for that and thought, right, okay, a couple in the desert. Mar she, I just started writing, and it was yeah, it's a completely different way of working, and that's how I was able to do them so fast because I just reasonably straightforward, simple story. You're not going to go in expecting any major shocking twists and things like that. It's kind of I see it as like yeah, like the sort of early 80s independent horror filmmaking or even sort of punk rock. Just that sort of down and dirty independent spirits. Like you say, just not too heavily planned, almost improvised in a way, and that sometimes yields some real magic results. So I love that. I sort of view independent, like truly independent horror publishing as being a sort of a modern day type of punk rock. So I think yeah, that's
Definitely.
part of what appeals to me.
Yeah,
And
I mean, definitely
DIY aspects.
coupled to that as the just kind of the look and feel of the books as well, especially the artwork is kind of very kind of really channels that exactly what you just explained there. Can you tell me a little bit how you work with the I can't remember his name now, the guy who does all your artwork for your books, how you work with him because he kind of really captures the ideas, but in a very specific way that kind of really does feel like that punk rock 80s indie horror kind of feel. Yeah.
Funnily enough, I actually use so I've used Trevor Henderson for Maggie's Grave, Forgotten Island, The
Right.
Heart, and Rotten Tommy. Um, and I've used one guy 3 times. I used Gemma more. I've used different guys, different people, but I'd still have a sort of unified feel to them. So I do my sort of graphic design and things, so like the titles and the
Right.
actual layout of the covers. But the art is something I cannot do. I definitely rely on very talented artists for that, and they all work totally differently. So some people I will send a sketch and say, yeah, could you do this? But do it much better, And Trevor's amazing for that. Trevor Henderson, who's done like Siren Head and things now, he
Right.
just he takes a sketch of mine, changes it so that it's 10,000 times better, and sends me that. Some people will send me dozens and dozens of ideas, and like Maciek Kumada, who did Death Spell,
That's spell them.
he sent me, I think 15, 12 or 15 different ideas, and the problem was they were all amazing. And it took me weeks to decide which one I actually wanted to go for. Um, but everyone I work with, yeah, they know this. Usually, it's people like Maciek and Ryan, who's done my cover for "And by God's Hand You Shall Die." They've sort of messaged me saying, "Hey, look, I'm an artist. I would love to do a cover for you."
All right.
So they kind of know my aesthetic, they know my work, they know the vibe and feel that I'm going for because as someone who is, my favorite kind of horror is from like the 70s and the 80s, and with regards to films, with regards to paperbacks, with regards to posters and cover art. Um, so they know what I'm going for. So there doesn't need to be a huge amount of communication there. Um, Occasionally, so I worked with Mark Bell, who on Summer of the Monsters, who I hadn't worked with before. And he's done a lot of things with like Studio Ghibli, with Disney, with Bluey. So it's a very different aesthetic to
Yeah,
mine generally, but because that book had a sort of whimsical Ghibli-esque
it
quality
does.
to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought his work would be perfect, and I love the cover he gave me, and it's unlike anything I've done, but I feel like it's still feels part of cover wise, it doesn't jump out as being unusual. It still sort of works as part of my covers. Yeah, I love cover artwork. I hate seeing it. There's nothing worse than an indie author's bringing out a new book and it's Microsoft Paint
Generic.
sort of
Yeah,
like just a photo and or I hate that, and I also hate a lot of modern trad published stuff. Like if you walk into Tesco over the roads and you just look at the paperback rack and it's all a silhouette of someone with a sunset behind them and the generic titles, generic artwork. And you know what? These marketing people know what they're doing. I'm sure that sells really well, but I just find it
yeah.
like just soul crushingly boring. So yeah, for me, I really want to do eye-catching art because especially as an indie author as well, you have to stand out somehow. And people will be
Definitely.
flicking through Amazon or whatever, and you've got half a second where they see a thumbnail photo of your book. So you need to have eye-catching art, or they're just going to scroll on past. So that's the one thing I always suggest to new indie authors starting out is spend money on a good cover because you can get
Mhm.
good covers. You don't need to spend £500 or something. You can get a good cover for a good amount of money, but it's so important.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, especially for someone who's like independently publishing themselves like that. Yeah. I mean, and how do you go about? I mean, obviously the artwork is crucial. It's kind of like that's the first thing before they even seen the blurb or anything about the book. That's what they see first. But how else, kind of publishing your books yourself? How else do you go about promoting the book to get it out there? Because I found you. Curiously, I found your books because of like American YouTube videos and things like that, who are really into that, the horror and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, probably Brandon Baker reads probably one of his videos because he opened me up to a whole bunch of new readers. It's extremely difficult. I was lucky in that when I first started publishing, I had a very small following who I used to post pictures on Instagram of my dog Boris the pug posing with my paperback horror books, and that got me about a few thousand followers. So that I did have an audience who, when I wrote my first book, they liked me. They knew I had good taste in horror, which is important. And enough people were willing to give me a try. My marketing strategy has never changed. It's just put pictures of my dog with horror books, other people's and my own. Um, I've never spent a penny on advertising.
Right.
I've never really sought out reviews, interviews, or anything. I've only ever had one print review, and that was in Scream Horror magazine, actually by
Right.
Sadie Hartman of my very first book, Forgotten Island. I've got my copy of Scream over there with my review, and it's still my only print review, but it's incredibly difficult to market. You have to have a very strong social media presence. So for
Mhm.
the longest time, I was juggling Twitter and Instagram, and then there was Blue Sky and Mastodon and Facebook. I've reached a point now where it was just getting too much. I hated it all. So I've scrapped everything apart from the Instagram,
Right.
letterboxed as well. But I'm just lucky. I'm at a point where I have enough sort of readers that I don't need to be using social media as much. But unfortunately, if you're starting out, it is a necessary evil.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, but yeah, at the same time, I mean, like Instagram is such a powerful tool, especially for kind of the horror and the horror
yeah.
book community is fantastic. I mean, I've discovered so much stuff on there, and it must be so great to get your name out there as well. These people discover you, and that's such resilient fans as well. I mean, the photos that people post on there, and they just
Oh,
got all of your books there. It's crazy. Yeah, it's great.
It's amazing, and that's the great thing. It's it's my sort of success, if you want to say that, is
Yeah.
entirely down to the fans and the readers. They are, I when I started out, I absolutely could not afford any advertising. Um, Still can if you see the amount of people. I've seen people on these book groups saying, "Yeah, I made £20,000 this month, and it only cost me 8,000 in advertising." I'm like, "Give me a break, man. That's not helpful." Um, so yeah, it's for me, it's word of mouth. It's my
Word of
readers
mouth. Yeah.
posting, and they're so good, and they some people just post a book and a wee review. I want amazing. Some people will do this amazing photoshopped
Yeah, they do lots of artwork there
like
on Instagram. It's
yeah,
crazy, yeah, especially for books. Yeah.
it's unbelievable. I've got people. There's one girl, Kerpy and her bricks, who does
Lego
Lego
creations of the
versions of
books.
some of my
Yeah.
books. Yeah, I've got the Har, and she's done one for Forgotten Island and things. It's like I'm constantly blown away by their creativity and passion, and it's like I'm just immensely thankful because it's my advertising is sharing everyone else, all these other people's stories
Sure.
and posts to my own page
Uh,
because they're just it's so good. So it's Instagram is the one I've stuck with because it's the one where there's the most sort of nice book people. It's one where there's the least amount of stupid drama. And yeah, people there are so passionate. I tried to get into TikTok, but I think I'm too old for it now. I don't
I feel
understand.
the same. Yeah, I'm not that old, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel very old. Yeah. Get onto TikTok. I was going to say, but also I think you recently went to a horror con as well. Is that something that you do quite often as well? You visit the horror cons. That must be a kind of quite a surreal experience to find these same kind of people that you find on Instagram who come and appreciate everything that you've done so far. Now,
It's amazing. Yeah, so I did my first. I'd done a couple of smaller cons in Edinburgh that had been more sci-fi fantasy focused, so I did not do well at them. I sat there for all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and I think I sold one of the year. I sold 7 books. It was dispiriting to say the least. Whereas HorrorCon, uh, I was meant to go to one 2 years ago, but then we had a terrible storm, so I couldn't make it. But last year and this year, yeah, absolutely fantastic. It's in Glasgow. There's going to be another one next year.
Mhm.
It's amazing because I don't know. I still feel just like some guy who, well, I am. I'm just some guy who sits at home and writes my stories. So when people come up nervously with copies, well-read copies of my books, asking to sign them and asking for a selfie and things like it's the most amazing feeling. I don't know if I'll ever get used to it.
And that's just close to home. I mean, have you been to like American places? Have you been to any cons over there yet?
No, no.
Well, they'd lap you. They'd lap you up over there. I mean, there's such great YouTube reviews of your books and stuff. They'd love you over there.
I'd love to go. I'd love to go, especially if someone would pay me to go. 'Cause, it's not cheap. But yeah, I'd love to. I mean, most of my when you Amazon breaks down where your and Ingram actually I've started using Ingram now. They break down where your sales are coming from, and
Right.
it's usually somewhere between 70 to 80% of my sales come from America. So I would love to go and meet my fans, my fans. Oh, let's just say meet my readers there. A lot of people a lot of my patrons on my Patreon are in America. I did meet a couple of them at the Horror Con, which was fantastic. Yeah, I love the horror cons because I'm not a big
Sure.
people person generally. I don't really I'm quite quiet. But I love a horror con because everyone there loves horror. Everyone there, the people
Yeah.
at your table, they love reading. They're looking for something to read. They're looking to be entertained. So it's like, well, I've got something for you, from this selection because I like to write in every genre of horror I can find. So yeah, I really want to do more of them. It's just difficult getting
Sure.
there. To Glasgow's fine. That's an hour drive. My wife can drive me and she helps out. But even going down to Manchester or something, I don't know how we'd get all my books down there in a suitcase. I don't know.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, it's just before I let you go. Obviously, you're promoting this book right now, but because you have done so many different genres, and like you said, you just want to keep doing as many different genres and different kind of things that you can. Can you let us in on the kind of thing that we maybe can expect from you next? Is there a specific kind of genre or subgenre that you want to get out next?
Yeah, so my next one, I'm undecided between which is my next one. It's either going to be a nunsploitation.
All right.
It's either going to be yes, it's either going to be the one set in the convent with the nuns, or it's going to be one that's more based on Scottish folklore, more more harrish than
Right.
I'd say the nun one's more erring towards her death spell territory, and the folklore one's erring much more towards horror territory. But both of them are going to go places you're not going to expect as well within that. I've not decided which one's coming next, which is an advantage of or a disadvantage of writing 3 or 4 books at the same time, as I like
Do you
to
write?
do.
Do you write them at the same time, or do you kind of do you have one more or less finished and get onto another one? How do you? I mean, I can't even read 2 or 3 books at the same time, let alone try and write 2 or 3 books at the same time.
I will do like a draft, maybe I'll do like a first draft, then probably a second draft, and then at that point I'm like, right, I better take some time away from this. So I'll do first draft or a fourth draft or whatever of another book that I'm working on. So I go back and forth between drafts, and I'm constantly outlining as well. So usually in between drafts, I'll outline a new story. I was looking at my sort of, I try and keep track of it all. So I've got my next 10 books. Either at the very least, they're fully outlined chapter by chapter, ready to be written. And some of them are in like draft 3 or 4. So I've got the next 5 years covered.
Wow. And I mean, to come up with 10 different ideas, is that because you're like watching a movie maybe, and you're like, right, this one I've not done this yet. This is it's time, and you kind of you jot down the specific genres that you think
Yeah, like
you
there's
need to cover
definitely
next.
there's always genres that I want to work in, but I need that little spark of an idea, and usually it comes
Yeah,
from watching something that so this folklore one, the idea came while I was watching a film that is diametrically opposed to that, just like the opposite type of film. But I was like, oh, what if I put that into this setting? And so that the idea was born from there. So it's usually watching a film, but not the film you would expect. I don't watch a slasher and come up with an idea for a slasher. I'll be watching a
yeah.
rom-com and come up with an idea for a possession story or something, because something in it will just make me go, hang on, yeah. Films are definitely my biggest inspiration.
No, definitely. That's what I really appreciate when I reach the end of a book. Even though I'm not sad that one of your stories ends, it's really cool to then read kind of films or music that inspired the story, because that gives me something else to dive into straight afterwards. I appreciate, because a lot of people, especially writers and kind of filmmakers, they don't like to share too much of their inspiration because they don't like to be compared to other stuff.
Yeah, they think, oh, they'll think I've copied it or something. It's like
Yeah,
there's nothing super original out there anyway. So, everyone's sort of riffing on other people's stuff at this point. It's just about making it your own and things. And yeah, I love. I mean, I like if I go and see a film at the cinema and I really, really like it. Like I remember, was it last year? I can't remember. I went to see Oppenheimer and I loved it. And I came out and I walked home, and what I did was I went straight onto Spotify and I listened to the soundtrack because I
right.
wanted to keep myself immersed in that world for another half hour or so. So that's kind of what I hope with the people will maybe they'll reread the book at some point with that soundtrack in mind. I always hope that people are gonna you know when I mention a piece of music in a story, I always kind of hope that they're gonna switch it on and listen because it's sort of written with that piece of music in mind. I just love art and creativity, music,
No, no,
film.
no. But
I love it
I mean,
all.
that's why I do what I do as well, because I just love kind of sharing the stuff that I love with other people. So that's why I like kind of speaking to you. I like to kind of share my love for this book, and kind of that's why I appreciate these kind of books. I mean, the other day I was speaking to Nat Cassidy about his new book, and he's unabashed as well about sharing every inspiration that went into his books as well, which I really appreciate that, because it's cool. It's not a bad thing to kind of say, hey, all this stuff we've all drunk it all in, and we just want to give it a mix around and give our spin on it. And I just really appreciate that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, I love some of these films that I watch are really obscure and hard to find and stuff, and I just want more people. I think more people, if they just saw them, would love them. So I always want to
exactly,
shout about stuff that I love. So to maybe introduce it to 1 or 2 other people, just
exactly.
great.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time, David. It's been really good to meet you.
That's been great, man.
I wish you the best of luck with the book. And hopefully I get to either bump into you at a horror con or something, or speak to you about the next one sometime soon, sir.
Absolutely, man. That sounds
All
fantastic.
right.
Thanks for having me
Thanks,
on.
man. It's been a real pleasure. All right. Take care of yourself. Have a good day.
Cheers.
All
Bye.
right. Cheers then. Bye now, David.